Hello and welcome to International Indian School, Riyadh. I'm Zahida Jabeen. Today I'm going to teach you one of the lesson of Indian economic development, the very first lesson, that is Indian economy from 1947 to 1991. This is the first unit which I'm going to teach. This unit has two lessons. The very first lesson of this unit is Indian economy on the eve of independence. In this lesson, we will be studying about the condition of Indian economy when we got independence. What was the literacy rate? What was the infrastructure status? What was the foreign trade condition? What was the condition of industrial sector, agricultural sector, literacy rate, infant mortality rate, and in the 200 years of British rule, how the economy was crushed and it was deindustrialized. The handicraft industries were totally uh, brought to the lowest level, whereas our handicraft industry, which was a world fame before the advent of British in India, before the British started ruling India, it was having world fame. Our handicraft industry was sent to different part of the world. International trade, India was a leading trader in the world and has a lot of trading partners. Tea, spices, cashew, and jewelry, cotton textile, and silk textile was exported to different countries. So let us see some of the basic things of Indian economy on the eve of independence. What was the condition of Indian economy when we got independence? The year 1921 is considered as the year of Great Divide. What is the reason why 1921 is called the year of Great Divide? I'll tell you. The demographic profile of India is divided into, there is a theory of demographic transition. Demographic transition means transition from one stage to another stage. There were basically four demographic transition stages are there. The first stage is before 1921, the demographic condition of India before 1921. The second stage of demographic transition is from 1921 to 1951. The third stage of demographic transition is from 51 to 81, and after 81, fourth stage. But here we will not go into the detail of demographic transition. Rather, we will study specifically about certain things. The year 1921 is considered as the year of Great Divide because before 1921, the population growth rate was negligible, or sometimes even it was negative or stagnant, because the birth rate was very high as well as the death rate was very high. Both the birth rate and the death rate was very high, so there was negligible population growth, or in some year when the death rate was more than the birth rate, there was negative population was not growing, negative population growth was there. But after 1921, with the improvement in the medical facility, with the vaccination for various diseases, the death rate was controlled to a certain extent. And when death rate was controlled, the population started growing. The birth rate was high, but death rate was controlled with the medical facilities to a certain extent. So population started growing positive, means there was a positive growth in population. That's why the year 1921 is called year of Great Divide. Before 1921, population growth rate was stagnant, and after 1921, population started growing. That is the basic thing that you have to remember. So 1921 is called year of Great Divide. Now 1881 is a year when first census in India was conducted, but that time the British government was there. They only conducted the first census in 1881. After independence, the first census was conducted in 1951. Some basic industries were there at that time that was not established by the British government. It was a private industry. Iron and steel plant was established in 1907 in Jamshedpur in Jharkhand. There was another steel plant also that was in Calcutta. So these were the private iron and steel plant. It was not established by the British government. Some of the notable economists at that time, in pre-independence India, or at that time before independence, were Dadabhai Nauroji, William Digby, V.K.R.V. Rao, and R.C. Desai. They were famous because they have calculated per capita income and domestic income of the country at their own level. The government didn't try, they themselves have estimated with various studies at individual level. Among them, the work which was done by V.K.R.V. Rao was appreciated, was more significant. At that time, only few, when before independence, only few industries were there. Some of the industries were sugar industry in UP and Bihar, some part of Bihar. Cotton industries were there. Cotton textile mills were there in Maharashtra, Gujarat, and some part of Tamil Nadu. Jute industry was there in the West Bengal. Paper mill were there here and there a few. Iron and steel plant was there. There were only two iron and steel plant, one in Jamshedpur and one in Kolkata. Overall literacy rate at that time was just 16%, whereas female literacy rate was even less than 7%, means less than 7% female were able to read and write with understanding. Forget about any degree. They were only, literacy does not mean that a person is having a degree. Literacy means anyone who is able to read and write any language with understanding is called literate. Without any degree also a person can be literate. Only 16% of the total population was literate, and female literacy was even less than 7%. If we talk about the life expectancy at that time was just 44 years. An average Indian was living for 44 years before independence, whereas at present it is 68 years. Infant mortality rate was very high, 218 per thousand. The economic policy of the British government at the time was to make India mere supplier of raw material for British industry and market for the finished goods from Britain. Railway was introduced, of course, by the British government in 1850. It helped to break geographical and cultural barriers. People start traveling long distance. It fostered commercialization of Indian agriculture, means Indian agriculture was commercialized. The purpose of introducing railway was not to break the geographical and cultural barriers, but the purpose of introduction of train or railway in India was to draw the raw material from the interior part of the country and send it to the ports so that from there it could be sent to Britain. Post and telegraph was introduced to maintain law and order, so that if any disturbance, any revolt is there, any organization or an Indian is trying to question the ruling of the British government, immediately it was crushed and army was sent. So to know what is happening in different corners of the country, they introduced post and telegraph. Some basic infrastructure of that time was railway was of course introduced. Some ports were there, water transport was there, post and telegraph did develop, but real motive was not to provide the basic amenities to the people of India, but to subserve various colonial interests like drawing raw material from interior part of the country and mobilizing their army to different part of the country to control the upheaval and revolts. If we talk about the agricultural productivity, the state of agriculture was very poor. Land settlements, especially zamindari and jagirdari system was there, in which the profit accruing from agriculture went to the zamindars or jagirdars instead of cultivators. Whereas Jamindars did not do anything to improve the condition of agriculture. They were just collecting rent from the cultivators, regardless of their economic condition, which created immense misery and social tension among the cultivators. The revenue system, which was imposed by the British government, were the main reason for the zamindars to do all the atrocities to collect the revenue. Zamindars were, if they were not submitting the specified revenue amount, the fixed revenue amount on the specified date, their ownership of or their zamindaris were taken, withdrawn, their rights, they were losing the rights of zamindars. The British government was removing them and capturing the land by themselves. At the time, the technology which was used in agriculture was very low. Low level of technology was there. There was no irrigation facility. Totally irrigation was dependent on monsoon. Use of fertilizer was almost negligible, and there was no facility for the credit. Institutional credit was not available. Some local people used to give credit. They were the money lenders and the big traders who were keeping the rate of interest very high. Commercialization of agriculture adversely affected the self-sufficiency of village economy. Earlier, when commercialization of agriculture was not there, more food grains were produced, and the village economy was self-sufficient. But with the introduction of commercialization of agriculture, when cotton, rubber, jute, indigo was cultivated, there was a decline in the production of food grains. So India was not able to produce sufficient food grain as it used to do earlier. If we talk about the industrial sector at that time before independence, our famous handicraft industry declined due to the discriminatory policy of British government and cheap machine-made goods which were imported from Britain. India was systematically deindustrialized. India was made just a supplier of raw material for the British industry and a market for the finished product of British industries. This created massive unemployment in India because of decline of handicraft industry. British government policy was such that it gave maximum benefit to its own country and exploited Indian resources. Some industries were established in the second half of 19th century. They were the jute industry in Bengal and cotton textile mill in Maharashtra and Gujarat, sugar, cement, and paper industries were there. So this was the status of India on the eve of independence. The trade partners, Indian trade was limited only with the British government